What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome to another episode of Optimize Your Body podcast. Today, I want to talk about a topic which you're all interested in because I constantly get these messages about building muscle and losing fat. Everyone wants to lose fat and build muscle, but I want to talk about, is it actually possible to achieve both realistically? And what's the most effective way to achieve the goal you want to achieve, right? Whether that be more fat loss or building muscle. Now, the reality is we want to be dropping visceral fat, right? The fat around the internal organs at all costs, because ultimately that's going to take years off your life and you're setting yourself up for diabetes and chronic illness, right? If you've got too much visceral fat around your organs, it's just a matter of time, right? But more importantly, most people are under muscled, right? Research shows that actually, I think it's about 40% of people who have type 2 diabetes are actually not overweight at all. You would look at them and potentially think they're slim, but they're metabolically obese, right? Which means they've got way too much visceral fat and they haven't got enough muscle on their body. Muscle, they're under muscled. So that's essentially what it looks like, right? With the research coming out on muscle and strength and everything else, and how important that is for metabolism and insulin sensitivity and all these kind of things. So people are under muscled. So you really want to be adding as much muscle to your body as you can, like, period. That's it. The fat loss, that needs to be essentially the side effect. That needs to be the byproduct of, for example, where I'm at now, right? I've got a lot of muscle in my body, in the shape of my life, shredded all year round. And that's just a byproduct now of the level I've got myself to in terms of the way I eat, the way I live, and ultimately years of training in the gym. So let's get into it. So can you turn fat into muscle? Right? This thing annoys me. People say, I'm going to just turn the fat into muscle. Doesn't work like that. They're different types of tissue. So you can build muscle, right? Or you can lose fat. You can't do them both at the same time. You can do them both simultaneously. So some people, it really depends, which I'm going to go into detail now on. You can build some muscle, lose some fat simultaneously. But ultimately, you don't turn fat into muscle, right? It doesn't work like that. So the kinds of people that can actually build muscle and lose a significant amount of fat are people, A, with a big reservoir of fat to lose. Like, I take some clients on, right? And they're overweight. And also on top of that, they haven't lifted weights for a while, right? Or they've been, some clients I take on anyway, they've been lacking consistency for a while. And when they get back into it, boom, obviously their body responds because it's almost like they're getting the newbie gains again. And they've got a big reservoir of fat to lose. So they start melting fat and build a muscle. So number one, you have to have a big amount of fat to lose if you're going to build muscle and lose fat. If you haven't got much fat on your body, then the likelihood is you're not going to lose fat at the same time as build a muscle, although it does happen. But two, newbie gains are beautiful, right? So if you've never lifted weights, like, it is amazing, that honeymoon period of, good 3 to 6 months of newbie gains. You'll lose fat as well. If you've got fat to lose, you'll probably build muscle and lose a bit of fat. Again, it all depends on how much fat you've got to lose. And the other thing then is obviously the people who are taking anabolic steroids, right? Their body is 24 hours anabolic. So they're burning fat when they're sat on the couch, right? Their body's in that constant fat burning state. Obviously, you still have to eat pretty well, right? You don't just take steroids and get jacked, but that's another type of person who can really lose fat and build muscle. Again, depending on how much fat they lose. It always comes back to that. If you haven't got much fat and you're lean, the likelihood is you're not going to get both. Simple as that. You might get some visceral fat, of course, lose visceral fat. That happens a lot. But visible body fat, not as likely. So also, people always ask me, I'm trying to build muscle and lose fat to the point, right, that I'm talking about today. But, I'm cutting back on calories at the same time. So can you build muscle in a calorie deficit? The answer is good luck. Really. It's highly unlikely. You can build muscle. Again, obviously, steroids, of course. Yes, they can build muscle in a deficit. Generally, if it's newbie gains, again, it comes back to that. You can build muscle in a deficit if you're a newbie, right? You only got to look at a dumbbell, you start building weight, building muscle. The body thrives off novelty. But for the most part, no, you need to be in a calorie surplus to build muscle, right? That's just basic science. So ideally, you want to be in a calorie surplus of around about at least 5% above your maintenance calories, right? So if you need 2,000 calories to maintain weight, generally, you're going to need to eat around about 2,200 calories on average. 2,000, not very good at maths, at least 2,075 calories, right? Because that's 5% on top, I think. 2,125. No, I'm getting it wrong. 2,100, bloody hell, it's been a long day. 2,100 calories, right? Would be 5% on top of that maintenance you'd have to eat generally to build muscle. So ultimately, let's look at where you need to be when you're doing a bulk, right? So when you're looking to build muscle, and I know it's winter time now, or coming into autumn, should I say, in most parts of the world where people are listening. And really, this is a good opportunity to build muscle. You should be building muscle all year round anyway, through all seasons. You should be focusing mainly on building muscle. But now is a time where you're probably not going to be on the beach as much, right? And really capitalize on this opportunity. And if you're going to do a bulk now, really, the sweet spot is to be building twice as much muscle as you are fat, right? And the best way to gauge that is on a DEXA scanner. Now, most people, when they do a bulk, they gain loads of fat and not much muscle. So if you can gain, let's say, a kilo of muscle and, zero point 0.5 kilos of fat, by the way, your body fat as a percentage then is not going to change that much. You're winning and you look better doing that. But you have to accept, if you want to do a bulk properly, again, depending on what level you're at, if you've got a lot of fat, you're going to lose some fat and build muscle, at least for a period of time. It's not going to happen forever, maybe 1 to 3 months. But generally, you're going to build twice as much muscle as you are fat when you're looking to do a build. But again, most people fuck it up and essentially they just gain loads of fat, like, 3, 4 times the amount of fat, maybe more than they are muscle. And they end up just looking soft like a jelly baby, like I said in one of my posts recently. So that's what you want to aim for. That's the sweet spot. Get a DEXA scanner, do a DEXA scan if you can, DEXA, probably the most accurate way to do it, other than underwater stuff, which you're not going to do because it's expensive and not many places offer that. Type in DEXA scanner in your area. Do that, say, every 12 weeks. Don't want to do any sooner than that because building muscle is a slow process. When you build muscle, it's only going to happen. I think they did a recent study and it's literally way less than what they thought in terms of building muscle. Like you're never going to get more than, even if you're like a genetic freak, a muscle building genetics, amazing, natural, obviously not taking steroids, 1.5 pounds of lean muscle a month is essentially as good as no, I would say a pound. Yeah, about a pound of lean muscle a month. Yeah, you're not going to get, I'd say 2 pounds, 1.5 pounds of muscle a month is as good as it possibly gets. Like realistically, if you can gain half a pound of muscle like a month, especially if you've already got experience lifting, that's amazing, right? So really, you want to focus primarily, regardless of what your goal is, you want to focus mainly on building muscle because when it comes to the fat loss piece, when you go into doing a cut or you decide to shred, like I've said before, you need to be increasing the output of calories. When it comes to losing fat, cutting calories and restricting food, if you're consciously trying to cut back on certain foods, right, all the time, and it becomes like you're applying willpower when you're doing it. Unlike for me, I find it hard, right? Because I still have to use willpower and discipline, of course. But really, it's a lot easier because I can get away with so many calories because I've built so much muscle. So I've increased the output of calories to the point where it's actually really hard for me to overeat. And it's actually quite challenging. Actually, it's not that hard. I can get into a surplus because I love food. But it is kind of challenging in a way for me to actually gain weight. Like if I want to gain weight, because I move so much, first and foremost, most of my calories burnt are going to be from my movement in the daytime, probably average about 12,000 calories a day. And also because I've built so much muscle, my body is like essentially a Ferrari engine guzzling petrol, right? It's going to be expensive. It's going to cost your body a lot of fuel, right? If you get a car like that with a massive turbocharged engine. Well, that's essentially what it's like for me. And when you build a lot of muscle, your metabolism is like a roaring Ferrari engine, just basically burning through fuel, right? And our fuel being calories, energy, right? So ultimately, that's the way you want to do it when you want to lose fat. So really focus on building muscle, do that for a period of time, spend the next part of the 12 months, most of that focusing on muscle gain. Doesn't mean you're always going to add fat to your body. And the key way to do it is like build muscle, mainly muscle, a little bit of fat, but not noticeable, really. It's not really noticeable. You look way better because you add a muscle to your body. So you aesthetically, you look better. Your body starts looking tighter because you're building primarily muscle. And then it gets to a point where you want to do, generally every, say, 4 to 6 weeks, say 8 weeks, really, let's just say on average 4 weeks, really what you want to be doing then is dropping yourself down into maintenance calories or even a little tiny bit of a deficit for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then you bump back up into a surplus for say 4 to 6 weeks, a little bit of a surplus. Um, and yeah, that stops you, that mitigates fat gain. So you're building all primarily muscle, right? But you do have to be strategic with it. You've got to know what your maintenance calories are. You've got to track food and weigh your food for a period of time to know what this looks like. Otherwise, you're guessing. And if you say you haven't got time, you're full of shit, right? Look at your screen time. You likely spend half hour, an hour, or if you're like the average person, I think it's 2 hours a day on social media alone. If you say you haven't got time to track and weigh your food for 10 minutes of your day, you're full of shit and you don't want it enough. Simple as that. You're never going to get it. I'm just going to tell you how it is. So really, that's what you want to focus on. And ultimately, a simple surplus, right? I'll give you a simple equation when it comes to building muscle. Your weight in pounds, let's say you weigh 200 pounds or whatever your weight is, just whatever your weight is in pounds, times 15. Simple way to give yourself a rough estimation of what would be a little bit of a surplus. Now, that is going to be estimated. You can't look at these simple calculations as gospel and say, oh, okay, it's not working for me. You have to figure stuff out. Like I just said, it doesn't work like that. I'll have a coach to help you. So it's mapped out for you. But yeah, that's a simple way to kind of build muscle. Whatever your weight is, let's say 200 times 12, whatever that works out, shit at maths. I think that's 2,200 odd calories. Then basically that's what it would be, right? In calories. So 200, my weight is about 200 times 12, whatever that comes back as, that's the calories you want to kind of hit. Actually, it's whatever that is for me, that's 3,000 odd, that would be, right? Oh, I'm not good at maths. I don't know what it is. I think I've got it wrong there. Sorry. Your weight in pounds times 15. So for me, it'd be 200 times 15, which would be 3,000 calories, give or take. Now, that is not a surplus for me, but I'm an anomaly where my maintenance calories are like 3,800 just for me to maintain weight. I need way more than that to actually add muscle onto my body. But generally, that's going to give you a good gauge. All right. And ultimately, the biggest problem you're going to have, especially when it comes to building, is going to be the psychological battle of increasing calories slightly, or at least fueling your body enough to build muscle, having enough protein consistently and eating enough calories consistently and tracking that and weighing when necessary your food, and actually gauging it on a DEXA scanner or some form of metrics where you can track it, do your body measurements and photos. Photos are essential because they don't lie. And the biggest challenge is going to be you in your own head. Oh shit, I got to cut back now. I got to cut all the way. My weight's gone up on the scales. So when it comes to bulking as well and building muscle, really, if your weight goes up by a pound or two a month, that's normal, right? But you look better when you're doing that. But it depends again. If you've got fat to lose, with a lot of clients, when they've got a bit more fat to lose, their weight stays roughly the same. It might go up by a pound or two, even over the space of 3 to 6 months. But because they've lost a bit of fat and they built a bit of muscle simultaneously, it doesn't happen at the same time. Like I said, basically their weight hasn't really changed much. So that really does depend. But generally, as a general rule of thumb, 1 to 2 pounds a month total weight on the scales is kind of the sweet spot, really, when it comes to building muscle. Any more than like 2 pounds, generally, you're probably going to be gaining a bit too much fat. But when you see that number go up on the scales, ultimately, if you say to yourself, "Oh crap, my weight's going up," because your self-worth and loads of things, you've put too much value on the scales, then you're always going to be spinning your wheels if you can't get through that psychological battle in your head. And that's why having someone to hold you accountable, or some sort of structure or peace of mind with photos, for example, right, is really important. Otherwise, it's guesswork. And then a few years go by and you're in the same position that you've always been in, right? And that happens to most people, unfortunately. They don't look at it as a project, getting in shape, build a muscle, losing fat. They look at it as quick fix, build muscle. Doesn't happen fast. You got to put a lot of work in. It takes a lot of discipline, consistency, patience, and ultimately mental fortitude to do that. Fat loss is simple. If your main goal right now is fat loss and you want to focus on that above all, really a simple equation would be, your weight in pounds times 12. So to build muscle, generally your weight in pounds times 15, give or take. To lose weight, your weight in pounds, let's say I weigh 200 pounds, times that by 12. Whatever calories that comes back at, that's going to be a rough estimation to put you in a deficit. Again, though, you got to figure these things out yourself. A better way to do it, and the harder way, is to weigh yourself. Weigh yourself, right? Track and weigh your food for a week, maybe 2 weeks. weigh yourself again after a week and then again after 2 weeks. If your weight has stayed roughly the same, congratulations, you found roughly what your maintenance calories are, right? If you look over your average calories over the week, let's say you average, 2,000 calories, your weight hasn't changed, it's fluctuated a bit, but it's stayed the same, then you found about what your maintenance calories are. And then you want to bump up your calories, right? Obviously, it's more complex than that, but you need to look at you getting stronger as well. That's another really gauge of building muscle. Um, so yeah, so that's really how it works. You build muscle or you lose fat. You don't do both at the same time. And in terms of how much weight should you lose with fat, like fat loss, a simple metric to look at is no more than about 0.5% of your total body weight a week, right? So let's say you weigh 100 pounds. I'm just going to use 100 pounds because it's a simple metric and I'm shit at maths. Really, you don't want to be losing any more than zero point 0.5 pounds essentially a week if you weigh 100 pounds. Is that, oh my God, my maths is absolutely horrendous. Yeah, 0.5% of your total body weight a week. So no more than like zero point 0.5 pounds on average a week. So that would be 2 pounds a month if you want to achieve sustainable weight loss. People want to lose it fast. Now, again, if you do it the smart way, again, we had this 3-week fat loss challenge recently. The average person lost 7 to 8 pounds a week, right? Over 3 weeks. Are they going to keep it off? Most people, yes. Some people, no. Simple as that, right? It was a short-term challenge. I laid out, how it was going to be done. My approach is by far the easiest approach, which is the most important thing when it comes to sustainability. What's the easiest approach? What's the approach you feel like you can adhere to, right? And the approach that I use, especially with setting a really high protein target, and a few other factors as well, is more sustainable. So, they lost a lot more than that per week, the amount that I just said there. But essentially, their weight loss is definitely going to slow down now. And a handful of people stayed on with the program afterwards. And now we're going to focus on, okay, now let's do what I said earlier. Okay, we might need to bump your calories up for a week or two, rebalance out your hormones and give you a break psychologically. And then we'll go back into that deficit, but this time we'll slow it down. And a lot of these people had a decent amount of fat to lose as well. So the average weight that people lost that was, one guy, for example, was already super lean, and he lost, I think it was 5 pounds, but he dropped about 5.5 centimeters off his waist, and he retained muscle as well. So it looks different for everyone, depending on where you're at in your journey, like how much experience you've got with lifting weights, how much fat you've got to lose, and a few other factors really. So, if you look at 2% of your total body weight, you could go for a range. Let's say 0.5 to 1% of your total body weight per week. So if you weigh 100 pounds, that's very light, by the way, isn't it? Let's just say I weigh 200 pounds, right? So 0.5 of that would be 1 pound. 1% would be 2 pounds, right? So 1 to 2 pounds a week for me. That would be, 2% a month of my total body weight, which would look like around about, 4 pounds, right? 2% of 200 pounds, if I got that right. 4% a month maximum, right? So 1 to 2 pounds. Oh, I'm cocking up the maths. I'm so bad at maths. Anyway, you get the gist, ladies and gents. 2 to 4% of your total body weight per month on average. And remember, fat loss is never linear, right? This is a really key point. It's never linear. Some days you're going to gain, some weeks you're going to gain weight, or your weight's going to stay the same. That's normal on the process, right? Same as when you build a muscle, your weight's going to stay the same. It might drop a little bit one week, but as long as it's not continually dropping, you're winning. Same thing as if you're gaining, if you're losing fat, if it's not continually going up, and over the average of 1 month, look at over the average of a month. Have I lost, let's say at least 2% of my total body weight this month, right? It's a good way to gauge it, but you have to track where the weight's coming from. You need to be retaining muscle when you're in a deficit. So you need to be tracking these metrics. I can't stress that enough. We leave nothing to chance. Like with my clients, we track everything. What gets measured can get managed. All right, ladies and gents, over and out, right? I'm going to just leave you with that. I don't want to overcomplicate things. Very simple. Don't overcomplicate matters. What I do want to touch on, which is really important, is how do you build a muscle? What are the most effective training methods? And ultimately, the most effective way is you train appropriately for what you're looking to achieve, right? So if you're looking to build muscle, then you need to look at, am I training my body parts frequently enough? Number one. Am I being consistent with my training? So really, you want to be hitting each body part at least twice per week. So most people, like 80 to 90% of people, do better training the full body, say 3 times per week, right? Whereas if it's someone who's training really regular, they're doing 5, 6 times a week, then doing a push-pull split will probably be better. If you're training 6 days a week, then doing, one day where you're doing a push session, upper body push. Sorry, one day you're doing, upper body push, like chest, triceps, shoulders. Next day you do legs. Following day you upper body pull. So you're doing back and biceps. Throw abs in there as well. For example, throw abs in with the back session. The following day you're doing another push session, a different one, upper body, chest, triceps, shoulders. The next day you're doing a leg session, a different leg session. The following day you're doing another pull session for back and biceps and also core, right? If you're doing 6 sessions a week. So you're in every body part, 2 to 3 times per week either way, right? And if you do full body 3 days per week, but you want to ramp up results, as I mentioned before, do bands on the days in between. So 2 things I want to leave this with. Number one, I'm actually offering a free consultation call to my YouTube listeners. I'll offer it to my podcast listeners too, but I know most of you listen on YouTube. So if you actually want a free consultation call, I'm actually going to be offering that for the next 48 hours, right? As an exclusive offer just for you guys. I'm not offering this to anyone else. I've got 50,000 followers on Instagram. None of them are getting this offer. And on that call, what we'll do is we'll have a look at exactly where you're at, what's causing you to fall down. And then ultimately we'll get the solution for you, tell you exactly what you need and the game plan in terms of exactly what you need to do. And, the path which is going to essentially get you the fastest, most effective, sustainable results. So that'll be a 30-minute call max. Either way, you're going to leave the call with a game plan on how to crush your fat loss or muscle building or both maybe goals within that time period. So within that time period of say 3 months. So so I'm offering that to all of my audience. And finally, one more thing I want to give you is a freebie. So I'm going to put this into, I can't put it into the show notes. What I can do though is if you just drop me an email, admin@optimizeyourbody.com, then I will send you over my 9-week muscle building training program, which has helped hundreds of people get into the shape of their life physically, aesthetically, within the period of like 6 to 9 weeks. So just drop me an email with the word results, admin@optimizeyourbody.com, or just DM me on Instagram @Martin Silva Fitness with the word results, and I'll send that over to you. Cheers.